Have you ever felt homesick for a place you've never been? Walked through a city for the first time, yet somehow knew where the streets would lead? Looked into a stranger's eyes and felt familiar, as if you weren't meeting them, but remembering them? Some call it déjà vu. Others believe it's something more. Salvador Dalí once said he was the reincarnation of his brother, a boy who died before he was born. He believed he had come back to continue a life interrupted. But is that just surrealism? Or could it be memory without time? Today we journey into a mystery older than history. The idea that death is not the end, but a door. What if this isn't your first time here? What if you've done this all before? The heartbreak, the wonder, the waiting, the laughter that felt oddly familiar? Reincarnation isn't just a belief. It's an ancient whisper that echoes across generations. A suggestion that life is not a line, but a circle. At its heart, reincarnation is the idea that death isn't an end, but a transformation, a pause before movement, a door that doesn't close, but turns. And through it, something within us, call it the soul, the spirit, consciousness, crosses over, not into nothingness, but into another beginning, a new body, a new story, a new chance. In Hinduism, this cycle is called samsara, an endless loop of birth, death, and rebirth. Each life is shaped by karma, not as a punishment or reward, but as a consequence, a rebalancing. You hurt someone in one life. You may feel that weight in the next. You act with compassion, and it carries forward, like a seed carried on the wind. But this isn't about morality points. It's about evolution of the self, of the soul. In Buddhism, the idea is similar, but the goal is different: to exit the cycle, to awaken, to let go of attachment and illusion, because to be reborn is to remain in suffering, to cling to what isn't real. Still, for others, rebirth isn't something to escape. It's a gift. 1,000 chances to get it right, to love better, to heal what you once broke, to meet again the souls you've known before, in different forms, under different skies. Even the ancient Greeks believed in the soul's return. Plato wrote that knowledge is not learned, but remembered, that we carry echoes of former lives, buried deep beneath the noise of this one. And maybe that explains it. Those strange moments when a place feels like home, though you've never set foot there, or when someone's eyes stop you in your tracks, because for a second, you know them, but you can't explain how. Science might call it coincidence. Psychology might call it projection. But something in you feels different, because it doesn't feel like imagination. It feels like memory. Reincarnation survives not because it makes logical sense, but because it makes emotional sense. It fills in the blank spaces. It gives meaning to the pain. It gives time to the unfinished. It says, you will return. You will grow. You will remember. And even if you forget who you were, life remembers for you. And even if you forget who you were, life remembers for you. It's a thought that has echoed through temples, mountains, deserts, through the minds of mystics and the hearts of millions. Reincarnation is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest stories we've ever told. In the sacred texts of Hinduism, some of the oldest scriptures on earth, life is a river that never truly stops flowing. You are not the body, they say. You are the soul that wears it, like clothing. And when the body is worn out, the soul changes its garment, not in chaos, but in rhythm. A rhythm shaped by karma, the subtle math of the universe. Your actions, intentions, even your thoughts. They don't vanish when you die. They carry over, like an invisible letter you write to your future self. In this view, suffering isn't random. Neither is love. They are pieces of a story bigger than one lifetime can hold. And then there's Buddhism, a path of silence, clarity, awakening. Here, reincarnation isn't a journey you take. It's a dream you eventually wake from. You are reborn again and again, not because you must, but because you cling to desire, to identity, to self. But when you let go, truly let go, you step off the wheel. You stop being reborn. You become free. Not all traditions agree on the details, but many speak the same language, of souls returning, of lives intertwined. In ancient Egypt, it was believed the soul had many parts, and some of those parts would return, to continue what was left unfinished, to realign with Mat, the balance of the cosmos. The Druids of Celtic culture believed in soul migration, passing through animal forms, human lives, perhaps even trees, because to them, life wasn't just human, it was everything. In the Andes, in the lands of the Incas, rebirth was a natural part of the Earth's own cycle. Seasons died and returned. So did we. And in ancient Greece, where philosophy and mysticism danced together, Plato wrote of souls choosing their next lives. Like roles in a great play, reincarnation wasn't a punishment, it was a responsibility. And then there's the modern world, where beliefs blend, fade, and reemerge. In some Abrahamic faiths, reincarnation has been debated, suppressed, or reinterpreted. Yet among mystics, Sufis, Kabbalists, the idea survives, quietly, like an ember. Because perhaps it's not something you're taught. Perhaps it's something you already feel, deep down, that this life is not all, that the soul remembers even if we don't. The idea of reincarnation might seem like something ancient, lost in old temples, buried in dusty scrolls, but it didn't disappear. It followed us. Into cities, into science labs, into the quiet confessions of children. One man made it his life's work to listen. His name was Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, and for over 40 years he studied children who remembered things they were never supposed to know. Not fantasies, not dreams, but names, addresses, languages they'd never been taught. One boy in India said he had been a school teacher in a nearby village. He gave the man's full name, said he was killed by a gunshot, named his killer, described his old home brick by brick. Investigators followed the details. Everything matched. The name, the death, even the bullet wound, which appeared in the boy's current life as a birthmark. In the exact same spot, another child in the US spoke fluent Swedish, a language no one around him had ever spoken. When asked how he knew it, he simply said, "I remember." These weren't isolated stories. Stevenson documented over 2,000 such cases. He traveled to Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Alaska, gathering data, looking for patterns. Skeptics dismissed it. Coincidence, parental influence, fantasy. But some of these children were barely 3 years old, too young to invent, too accurate to ignore. But perhaps the most startling detail in some of these cases is how many children remembered being someone completely different, not just in another time, but in another body. There are stories of young boys recalling past lives as mothers, and girls describing their lives as old men. The soul, it seems, doesn't cling to gender. It clings to experience, to relationships, to unfinished business. And that raises a question few dare to ask. If who you are now feels so permanent, what happens when your next life doesn't match the identity you know? And then there is Salvador Dalí, the great surrealist painter, known for melting clocks and dreamscapes, once made a stunning claim. He believed he was the reincarnation of his brother, a boy who died 9 months before he was born. His parents gave him the same name, showed him photos of the dead child, told him stories. But Dalí felt it was more than memory. He said he was his brother, not just in name, but in essence. As he grew, Dalí became obsessed with death. He painted it. He studied it. He once wrote, "I do not believe in my own death." Because for him, death had already happened. He had returned. Was it trauma? Was it a child's confusion? Or was it memory? Around the world, more stories keep surfacing. A girl in Myanmar who feared water said she drowned in a past life. She was born with unusual marks on her chest, shaped like rope burns. A boy in Turkey who cried every time he passed a certain mountain road, and later described in vivid detail how he died there decades ago. In a car accident no one had told him about. In many of these cases, the children forget as they grow. By the age of 7 or 8, the memories fade, like fog lifting in the sun. But before they vanish, some leave behind stories, too precise to dismiss. Some say these are simply coincidences, that the human brain is hungry for patterns, and we stitch meaning where none exists. But others feel something deeper, a tug in the soul, a sense of returning, of picking up where you left off. Maybe that's why, in a world driven by science and logic, we still tell these stories. We still listen when a child says, "I used to be someone else." Because some truths you don't need to understand. You just feel them. If we really do return, why don't we remember? Why can't we recall the people we've loved before, the mistakes we've made, the lives we've lived? Maybe the forgetting is part of the design. Maybe we're not meant to carry the full weight of every lifetime. Maybe remembering would crush us, or trap us in the past. Or maybe it's not about memory, it's about essence. What you learned, what changed in you, what remained. Some say the soul evolves, slowly, across centuries. Each life a page, each experience a sentence, and the soul becomes the story. But others ask, why repeat it all? Why not make one life enough? The Stoics, those ancient philosophers of resilience and reason, didn't speak of reincarnation the way Eastern traditions do, but they spoke of cycles, of nature's rhythms, of a universe that endlessly recreates itself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Everything is recycled. The universe is change. Life is opinion." To him, life was a pattern, not a random sequence, but a structure like breath. Inhale, exhale, birth, death, return. And if we are part of nature, then why wouldn't we too return? The Stoics believed in accepting what we cannot control. In saying yes to what is, they called it amor fati, the love of fate. Not just enduring life's twists, but embracing them, as necessary as right. What could be more stoic than reincarnation? The idea that even death is not defeat, that we keep showing up again and again. And maybe when we return, we don't come back the same way. Maybe this time, you are a woman. Next time, a man. Maybe once you were a child who died young, and now you're here, learning what it means to grow old. If the soul is beyond gender, beyond skin, beyond borders, then perhaps we've already lived as the people we struggle to understand now. Maybe that's the purpose, to return in every form, so that no form remains foreign. Not to suffer, but to sharpen, to become. Maybe each life is not a sentence, but a refinement, an adjustment, until the soul remembers how to live in harmony with itself and with the world. And what if we're not just returning as punishment or reward, but simply because we're not done yet? Maybe there are people we need to meet again, wounds we need another chance to heal, promises we never got to keep. Maybe your next life isn't karma, maybe it's grace. We search for meaning in this life, in our pain, in our joy, and reincarnation whispers. What if the meaning is too big for just one lifetime? What if your fear of the dark comes from a night you didn't survive? What if your gift for music is a craft you've honed across lifetimes? What if your soul has been broken and rebuilt 100 times? And that's why you feel so old. Even when you're young, maybe that's why we dream of places we've never been, why we fall in love without knowing why we carry emotions that don't belong to this life alone. There's a quiet power in that idea, because if you've lived before, you can live better now. If you've hurt before, you can forgive now. If you've failed before, you can begin again. And even if this is your only life, isn't it worth living as if it's not? To walk with care, to love more deeply, To see every moment as part of something bigger, something that began long before you were born and may not end when you die. Have you ever felt like you arrived somewhere? Not for the first time, but like you were finally back? You can't explain it. No memories, no logic. Just a quiet certainty, like your soul exhaled. Maybe you've walked that road before, not in this life, but in another. Maybe you've held those hands before, loved that voice before, said goodbye, and then somehow found your way back. There are moments in life that don't fit the story we're told, like puzzle pieces from another box, but we feel them, and deep down, they feel like ours.com. That sudden sense of déjà vu, the urge to protect someone you've just met, the grief you feel when you lose someone you've only just begun to love. How can you explain that? Unless some part of you already knew them, already lost them, already loved them. In another time, some people carry sadness they can't explain. Others carry wisdom beyond their years. Old souls, we call them. But what does that mean? How does a soul become old? Maybe it's been tested, wounded, stretched across centuries of joy and pain, and it keeps showing up. With more light, more questions, more depth. Some things you're drawn to, places you've never seen, cultures you've never lived in, languages your mouth seems to remember without being taught. That pull, it might not be curiosity, it might be recognition. And what about the fears? The ones that make no sense. The fear of drowning, when you've never even swum. The fear of falling, though you've never climbed.com. Sometimes the soul remembers pain, even when the mind forgets. Or maybe it's not fear at all. Maybe it's reverence, a quiet knowing that this isn't the first time you've stood in the fire and come out of it, changed. You've probably felt it. A connection that defies logic. A love that seems too immediate. A goodbye that hurts more than it should. And you wonder, why does this feel so big? Maybe because it is. Because some stories are too large to fit inside one lifetime. Maybe you've made promises long ago that your heart still intends to keep. Maybe there are people you're meant to meet again and again, in different forms, on different timelines, but always with the same gravity. The truth is, you don't have to believe in past lives to feel them. You just have to listen to the parts of you that don't speak in words, the ache you can't explain, the comfort you can't place, the longing that has no name. Maybe your soul remembers what your mind was never meant to carry. And maybe, just maybe, you're not becoming someone new. You're finding your way back to who you've always been. Maybe this life, this body, this name, this version of you is just one note in a much longer song. Maybe who you are right now is not the whole story, but just the chapter that could be written today. You've likely been here before. Not in this exact moment, not in these exact shoes, but maybe in some other shape, in some other heartbeat. You've walked the earth, looked up at the stars, and wondered the same thing. Is this really the end? We're told that life is short, that time slips away. But what if time is a circle, not a line? And what if death is not the closing of a door, but the opening of another? Reincarnation doesn't promise clarity. It doesn't give us names, dates, or final answers. But it offers something else, something quieter, a kind of peace, the peace of knowing that maybe nothing is truly lost, that the love you give lives on, that the lessons you didn't finish will wait for you, that this isn't the only chance you'll ever get to be brave, to be kind, to begin again. Maybe you've already met parts of yourself in strangers, in dreams, in places that make your heart ache for no reason at all, comma. And maybe long after this life is over, you'll return again, not as punishment, not as reward, but simply because the soul keeps moving, keeps learning, keeps loving, keeps reaching. for something beyond the limits of memory. So take your time here. Breathe it in. Love fully. Hurt honestly. Forgive what you can. And let go of what you can't. Because whether or not you come back, this life deserves your whole heart. And if you do return, maybe next time you'll remember a little more. Maybe next time you'll carry something stronger. Maybe next time you'll meet someone and know we've done this before. And you'll smile. Not because you understand it, but because it feels true. So tell me, do you still think this is your first time? Or is there a part of you, quiet, ancient, unshaken, that already knows the answer? We are born. We live. We die. And maybe, just maybe, we begin again.